Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Friday night teachings on the easy path to travel to omniscience. As Venerable Jigme shared last week, Venerable Chudrin is traveling in Asia. She'll be heading to India in a few days. And so she requested the Abbey community to do a review of the teachings that she's given so far. So tonight we're going to do some meditation on Shakyamuni Buddha, which she has been leading us for the past few months. And we will also do a contemplation on the 9-point death meditation. We have got that as our main topic tonight. And I find these meditations very, very helpful. And also the time that we give ourselves on Friday nights. I know that for a lot of folks, having busy lives, having the kind of time to sit down and do really almost like luxuriate in meditation practice sometimes gets to be very difficult to find. And so tonight we'll have a nice chunk of time to really contemplate deeply the meditation on the Buddha, to really bring him alive in our minds, and then as well as to contemplate this very profound and important Lam-rim topic of the 9-point death meditation. So we have almost like a luxurious opportunity to really go deeply into these points and to really bring the Dharma alive in our minds. And then after I lead us through that, there's a few points that I want to make sure that we don't miss about the teachings on death and impermanence. And then we'll have some questions and comments if folks have them. So let's begin with a few minutes of just bringing ourselves into whatever space that you are in right now. We'll do about 5 minutes of silent meditation, and then we'll go into the meditation on the Buddha. Find yourself in a comfortable position so that you can sustain that over this next hour or so. Make sure your spine is straight, firm yet relaxed. Put yourself in a very comfortable yet firm, focused position. And use your breath as the object of your meditation. And any discursive thinking or any sounds or anything coming from the world around you, just gently return your attention back to your breath. This gives us an opportunity to only have one object in our minds, which generally we have many going on, sort of juggling them in there, which is quite a difficult thing for us to do, is to focus on one object, which then brings our minds to a kind of stability, a little bit of maybe concentration, so that when we imagine the Buddha and think about the Lam-rim topic, we've got some stability in our minds to be able to focus. So let's use the breath as that object and not be hard on ourselves if we find our attention wandering away every few seconds, without any judgment, without any inner conversation on how you're doing it or not doing it well. Just simply bring your attention gently back to your breath. So imagine in your mind's eye in the space in front of you, on a precious throne both high and wide, supported by 8 great lions on a seat of a multicolored lotus, moon, and sun discs, all made of light, is your main spiritual mentor in the form of the conqueror Shakyamuni. If you don't have a particular spiritual mentor, then just imagine the Buddha, who is all of our teachers, on that lotus, moon, and sun disk. The color of his body is pure gold. On his head is the crown protuberance. He has 1 face and 2 hands. The right touches the earth. The left, in meditation posture, holds an alms bowl full of nectar. Elegantly, he wears the 3 saffron-colored monastic robes. His body, made of pure light and adorned with the signs and marks of a Buddha, emanates a flood of light. Sitting in Vajra posture, he is surrounded by my direct and indirect spiritual mentors, by deities, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, heroes, heroines, and an assembly of Arya Dharma protectors. In front of him on exquisite stands are his teachings in the forms of books of light. The members of this merit field look upon me with great compassion, and in turn, at the thought of their compassion and virtue, I have great faith in them. By really seeing them in my mind's eye in this way, with this confidence and faith in them, also helps me to be more receptive to the teachings, opens my heart to the Dharma. We also imagine in the space around us, out into the expanse of infinite space, surrounded by sentient beings. And really use your imagination to build this beautiful visualization in your mind's eye. Seeing the Buddha in his 3-dimensional glory, not as a statue or a painting, but alive, radiating light. And then we think, I and all sentient beings, my mothers from beginningless time until now, have continuously undergone the dukkha of cyclic existence in general, and the suffering of the 3 lower realms in particular. Nevertheless, it is still difficult to fathom the depth and breadth of this misery. Now that I have attained a precious human life, so difficult to attain and so meaningful once acquired, if I do not realize supreme liberation in which all the dukkha of samsara is overcome, Guru Buddhahood, then once again I will have to experience the various torments of cyclic existence in general, and those of the 3 lower realms in particular. As I now have before me the spiritual mentor and the 3 jewels who can protect me from this pain, For the sake of all Mother sentient beings, I will do all I can to realize precious, perfect, and consummate Buddhahood. To this end, from the depths of my heart, I take refuge in the spiritual mentors and the three jewels. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by engaging in generosity and the other far-reaching practices, may I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by engaging in generosity and the other far-reaching practices, may I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by engaging in generosity and the other far-reaching practices, may I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings not be separated from sorrowless bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. Reverently I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind, and present clouds of every type of offering, actual and mentally transformed. I confess all my destructive actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in the virtues of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until cyclic existence ends, and turn the wheel of Dharma for sentient beings. I dedicate all the virtues of myself and others to the Great Awakening. And then really think in your mind that the Dharma is so precious that I am willing to give everything that I love, everything that I cherish, everything I'm attached to in this life, all the things that I struggle with, all transformed into glorious, beautiful offerings to the refuge field so that I can receive teachings and create the causes and conditions to have it now and in all future lives. So really build your mandala offering with all the most beautiful things that you love, multiplying them a billion, countless times over. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, fallen sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you, may all beings enjoy this pure land. The objects of attachment, aversion, and ignorance, friends, enemies, and strangers, my body, wealth, and enjoyments, I offer these without any sense of loss. Please accept them with pleasure and inspire me and others to be free from the three poisonous attitudes. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. Glorious and precious Root Guru, sit upon the lotus and moon seat on my crown, guiding me with your great kindness. Bestow upon me the attainments of your body, speech, and mind, the eyes through whom the vast scriptures are seen, supreme doors for the fortunate who cross over to spiritual freedom, illuminators whose wise means vibrate with compassion To the entire line of spiritual mentors, I make request. Tayata Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Soham. 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 Just let the mantra settle in your mind for a few moments here. So keeping yourself connected to the Buddha in the space in front of you and all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas around him. Yourself surrounded by all Mother sentient beings. So the entire expanse of space is filled with beings, holy beings, sentient beings. And together we reflect in the following way. This life with freedom and fortune, so difficult to attain and once attained so meaningful, will soon be destroyed. Death is certain to occur. Furthermore, no inner or outer circumstances can prevent it. I cannot add to my lifespan, which in fact shortens unceasingly. I am sure to die without having had the time to practice the teachings while alive. And not only do I have to die, the time of my death is uncertain. Because the lifespan of sentient beings of this world is uncertain, the causes of death numerous, and those of life few, and our bodies are as fragile as water bubbles. The time of our death is uncertain. At the time of death, everything but the teaching is useless. No matter how great the affection that my circle of loved ones has for me, I cannot take a single one of them with me. No matter how large a collection of lovely belongings I have, I cannot bring the tiniest portion of it with me. I must even be separated from the very flesh and bones I was born with. Therefore, what purpose does attachment to the good things of this life serve? The Lord of Death is sure to come, but it is unsure when that will occur. Since I run the risk of dying this very day, truly I must do something to prepare for death. By way of preparation, may I practice the teachings purely, free of attachment to any of this life's good things. Guru Deity, please inspire me to be able to do so. In response to your requesting the Guru Deity, 5-colored light and nectar stream from all parts of his body into you through the crown of your head. It absorbs into your mind and body, and those of all sentient beings around you, purifying all negativities and obscurations accumulated since beginningless time, and especially purifying all illnesses, spirit interferences, negativities, and obscurations that interfere with practicing the teachings purely, free of attachment to any of life's good things. As a result, your body becomes translucent, the nature of light. All your good qualities, lifespan, merit, and so forth expand and increase. Think in particular that a superior realization of the ability to practice the teachings purely, free of attachment to any of this life's good things, has arisen in your mind stream and in the mind stream of others. So really see yourself with this body of light, connecting to the Buddha in the space in front of you, helping open your mind to contemplating the Lam Rim this evening in depth with clarity and wisdom, the ability to take the teachings in deeply and to apply them to your life in a very personal way, a very real way, so that they hit very deeply into your mind. So we now have this precious opportunity to contemplate the Lam Rim on the 9-point death meditation. And as we go through each one of the points, really ask yourself, is this true for me? When I look at my life, when I look at the lives of others that I know, do these points make sense? Do they line up with my experience? If I'm willing to look clearly and honestly at impermanence and death, can I see the truth of the Buddha's words in my own life? To not resist, to not be afraid, but to do these contemplations in order to understand the nature of existence. So the first of the 3 main points in this 9-point death meditation, and once again we want to get these not only in our heads, we want to bring them down into our hearts, is that death is definite. And to bring that more clearly to mind, the Buddha offered 3 points underneath that. So the first one to take into our lives is that everybody dies, including our loved ones who we know so well. We have opportunities to make many choices in our lives all the time. But with death, we have no choice on whether it comes or not. No circumstances, no amount of status, no amount of money or power can stop the inevitability of death. So just really take that to mind and ask yourself, from your life experience, from what you've seen, is that true? The second point underneath this is our lifespan can't be extended. No matter how much we complain, whine, negotiate. When our karmic lifespan is exhausted, this life ends. Because we are an impermanent phenomena, we exist because the causes for this life of ours exist. And when those causes and conditions cease, so does this life. The third point is we die even if we haven't had time to practice the Dharma. If we have been concerned with the happiness of this life, our life looks something like this. The first 25 to 30 years are concerned with growing up, getting an education, having a good time, socializing ourselves to the world. So we don't practice the Dharma then. So check that out and see if it's true. And then between 30 and 60 years of age, we are totally focused on establishing a profession or a livelihood. Maybe we're raising a family, acquiring wealth or financial security and status. So once again, there's very little space and time to practice the Dharma. We are consumed with the happiness of this life. And then between 60 and 75, now we'll practice. But now the body is full of aches and pains. The body and mind lose their vigor and energy to practice. Maybe there are grandchildren to keep us occupied. So when the time of death comes, we will die without having created a lot of virtuous karma and without any mind training to be in a virtuous and clear place at the time of death. Because we haven't given the Dharma the time. So by pondering this first point, that death is definite, we can't stop it, everybody experiences it, and if we don't pay attention, we're going to die without having ever practiced the Dharma. If we really think about these honestly, we have to practice the Dharma and stop practicing just for the happiness of this life. The second main point is that not only is that death is definite, but the time of death is indefinite or uncertain. We don't know when it's going to happen. And so under this are 3 points that the Buddha taught to really bring that truth home to us in a very personal way. The first point is there is no certainty of lifespan. People die of all ages. So here we take a moment and look over our life and recollect people we know or maybe our family and friends know that have died. So as we go through in our memories, from the time we were small, think about all the people that you heard of, knew personally. How old were they when they died? Were they all old? So once again, we're taking our life experience to verify that this particular teaching of the Buddha is true. the second point under this one is that there are many causes for death, but not many causes for keeping us alive. It takes a continual great effort to keep ourselves alive. On one hand, we have everything needed to support our lives, many enjoyments and circumstances, so it seems. But with all that, we have to do a lot to keep ourselves alive daily. We need food, shelter. We have to make sure we don't freeze or live in incredible heat without protection. We need water, medicine, clothing. So daily we have to be really conscious about keeping this body safe and alive. On the other hand, it's quite easy to die. It doesn't require much effort at all. No water for a while, no food, no protection from the elements, and we won't last very long. And there are so many ways that death comes while making a living, enjoying ourselves, having a good time, riding in a car. Think of all the people that have died in the middle of doing something. And the third point brings it even more home, is that not only does it take a lot of effort to keep our bodies alive and not much effort for them to die, is that they're extremely fragile. Small things can harm or even kill us. Look at Ebola. These things that we can't even see. All the environmental hazardous places on this planet that have poisoned the water, poisoned the air, the soil, that have made beings very sick and have killed them. So by contemplating these 3 points under the uncertainty of when death is actually going to come, the conclusion is I must practice the Dharma now, because I have no idea when death will happen. And then the third major point is nothing else helps us at the time of death except the Dharma. And once again, as we go through these 3 points that the Buddha used to really bring this home, see if it's true. See if each one of them resonates with your life experience. Our possessions and wealth can't help us or come with us at our death. All of our stuff stays behind. But what does come is the karma we create procuring and protecting them, acquiring wealth. And that karma may ripen in a rebirth, who knows where, in an environment that may not be very pleasant, and ripen in mental habits that we have formed during this life that will bring suffering. So look at how you go about acquiring things. What is the state of mind in relationship to them? What kind of karma may each of us have created in acquiring the possessions and the wealth of this life? How did the 8 worldly concerns involve us? Attachment to possessions, to praise, good reputation, sense pleasures. Aversion to not having material possessions, aversion to some sort of criticism from others, having people not think well of us because of the lack of stuff, certain stuff, and our aversion to anything unpleasant. All of it gets left behind at death, except the karma. So if leaving behind possessions at the time of death is of no particular concern of yours, the next point is that our friends and family are of no help. They have to remain behind while we go into our next life. Think of all those relationships in your life. The love, the attachment, the care, how much we've put into those relationships to keep them balanced and healthy, or maybe we've struggled with them. A lot of energy, a lot of time. And at the time of death, if we're fortunate, they may harmoniously surround us, be there for us, have a presence of mind to comfort, and just hold the space for us if we're lucky. Or they will be just so consumed by their emotions that they may not either be unable to be there for us, or they may actually disturb the whole experience. When we need to have peace and calmness, their clinging to us will just add a level of suffering that we have no control over. And some of these relationships we've had for a long time. And at the time of death, we must separate from them all. So think about the people in your life who you care about. Never to be seen again. But what we do take with us in the next life is the karma that we have created in relationship to them. The attachment, the jealousy, the anger, the grudge holding. And then lastly is that even our bodies will be of no use. We can't take them with us either. In fact, at the time of death, they're shutting down, failing, maybe in great pain. This body that we have pampered, worried about, spent maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars on, and untold amounts of time and energy on giving it pleasure, making it look attractive, keeping it comfortable. At the time of death, we leave it behind as well, and take with us only the karma that we created. And taking care of it, worrying about it, pampering it. Indulging it. Obsessing about it. The body that got us around, that was part of our experience of life as we know it, will fall away. And so the conclusion to this final point, with this focus on what we will be leaving behind when we die, is that we must practice the Dharma purely and not be influenced by the attachment to the happiness of just this life and the 8 worldly concerns. Because in the end, all of that efforting, all that struggle for the happiness of this life is left behind. That the only thing that'll help us will be whatever understandings we have of the Dharma, a mind of love, compassion, Being able to take refuge and really take refuge at the time of death. To really wish that your death in whatever way could benefit beings. To see that there is no inherently existent I that's dying. So many important things the mind must be familiar with at the time of death, so the Dharma really is a powerful tool for us to move into the next life with a kind of confidence and peace. So practicing the Dharma purely is the one way to be able to do that. To not be distracted by the pleasures of this life. Well, I've always found this meditation to be extremely helpful on a number of levels, and I wanted to go over a few points that Venerable covered on the night that she spoke about death and impermanence for a few weeks when she taught this. And I just wanted to go through a few that I think it's good to remind ourselves on why it's important to remember death and what are the disadvantages of just not bothering to think about it. And one of the things that happened when she was giving this teaching, she must have said it about 3 or 4 times, is that she said the whole point of the Buddha teaching this was not to elicit fear or dread, but to wake us up. You know, to really start asking ourselves those very honest questions about, what am I doing with my life? If indeed death is certain, which we know, the time of death, from this meditation, we've gotten a lot clearer that it is uncertain and that there isn't really anything that we take but our karma, and that whatever understanding we have of the Dharma is going to serve us well if we just remember to practice, and that this meditation is one of those fuel-generating practices that gets us to take this question about what am I doing with my life a little bit more seriously. And then she said if there is fear, it needs to be the fear of dying without having lived a life with purpose. If you're going to get afraid, just say, okay, what am I doing? You know, am I going to die and have a whole bunch of regret and a whole bunch of guilt and a whole bunch of, gosh, I wish I would have, could have, should have? So she says it about 3 or 4 times, that this is really to inspire and to really get us to wake up on what a precious opportunity we have, and that we just don't know what's going to happen. And that the happiness of this life is going to fail us in the end. That it doesn't serve the long-term goal of awakening. She also points out not just about looking at, you know, what am I doing with my life, and also the happiness of this life and how it doesn't serve us, is, she says, if we do this meditation correctly, we get a clear look of how we spend our time on all the petty small things. You know, this is the biggest antidote for me, for my mind that worries, my mind that complains, my mind that gripes, my mind that judges, the mind that gets angry about all these small things that just make my mind go crazy. And that she says if we deeply understand the uncertainty of when death will come, we see that being irritated, judging people is a huge waste of time. Not only is it a huge waste of time, but we're creating a mental habituation to have that kind of mind, if not at the time of death, certainly in the next life. So this 9-point death meditation is to really get us to prioritize, you know, to first of all take a personal inventory of what we are doing with our life, and to be really honest with ourselves on how much we wasted, how much we squandered on things that have no value to them whatsoever. And so, I mean, we have this incredible potential having this rare human life, and, you know, what are we doing with it? And on that 1 week that she taught, and I've read this I think I've read this in Geshe Sopa's books on the Lam Rim, and His Holiness has said it a number of times. He says is that when we get ready to decide, you know, we can really use our bright, logical minds to think about death. Because they say, at least Geshe Sopa says, what he liked about sort of the Western mind, he says, is that when we decide to do something, we usually look at the benefits and we usually look at the disadvantages. Because if we're going to make a decision, we kind of put the list of the pros, we put the list of the cons, so we can really determine kind of on a practical level, kind of a logical reasoning level on, you know, what's going to be in this for me for the short term and the long term. And we do that on all matters of whether we're going to be buying a house, whether we're going to be getting a job, whether we're going to go into a relationship, whether we're going to take a vacation. We kind of list the advantages and disadvantages. And what His Holiness and Geshe Sopa say, it's a perfect tool to be able to think about the disadvantage, you know, what are the disadvantages of not remembering death, and what are the advantages of keeping it in our mind as much as we can. We can actually list those things, which the Buddha does do. And so it helps us to kind of get familiar with, you know, why bother? Which it's a really important topic to bother a lot about. So the Buddha set up 6 disadvantages of not bothering to remember death and what will happen with our minds and our lives. And he also put the advantages of taking the time to remember death and to have it to become a very familiar tool whenever the mind starts heading towards complaining and pettiness and the 8 worldly concerns and the happiness of just this life. So I wanted to go over those kind of as the final important piece of Venerable's teachings on death and impermanence. Okay, so the disadvantages of not bothering to remember death. Well, the first one, very apparent, we don't remember the Dharma. I mean, it just falls off the ledge. It takes a back seat. I mean, life's good. Why bum myself out by thinking about death? And that is really a mind that we have. You know, when life is good, I don't have to think about the Dharma, much less think about my death. Why would I depress myself? So by not thinking about it, the Dharma goes out the window. The happiness of this life has taken the driver's seat. Okay, so that's the first one, is that we don't remember the Dharma. Okay, second one, even if we remember the Dharma, we don't practice. And once again, it's the mind that says it's too hard, I'm too busy, I'm too tired. All right, so we have this little voice that says, I know the Dharma, but I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it later. I'm just way too busy. I don't have the time. So if we don't remember death, that is a big default excuse. Okay, then third, even if we do practice, we don't do it purely due to the 8 worldly concerns that kind of run in our minds. We do it with a non-virtuous motivation. Sometimes practicing the Dharma, we're attached to praise, we're attached to having a good reputation, being seen as being a Dharma practitioner. We're not focused. We're just distracted all the time on the happiness of this life. So we've got it in our minds. We might even get to the cushion. We might even go to teachings, but we do it for all the wrong reasons. That's number 3. Number 4, by not bothering to remember death, our practice will lack intensity, consistency, and strength. Like there's no fuel to keep focused. There's no fuel to make it real in our minds, to bring it home. Number 5, well, if we're not thinking about death, we will continue to do destructive actions that will get in the way of our liberation and awakening. Because we're not thinking about karma when we act, or how our actions will result in some future happiness or suffering. So we're not remembering death because karma and death have a really close relationship to one another. What I'm doing in this life is going to have a result in that life. And since I don't know when that's going to happen, what am I doing to create the causes for fortunate human rebirth the next time around? But if we're not remembering death, our ethical conduct just isn't very strong. We're not paying attention. Then number 6, we will die with regret and at the total mercy of the karma we created under the control of anger, attachment, jealousy. And because we're so habituated with those afflictive states of mind, because we're so focused on the 8 worldly concerns, it's not like at the time of death suddenly our mind is going to arise in some virtuous state. It's going to arise in the same habituated state that it's been doing all of its life. And then, of course, if we have some Dharma understanding in our minds, when at the time of death we see how much we squandered our precious human life, that will be a horrible state of mind to die with. Remorse. So death keeps our intentions much more in line with our long-term wish to become awakened. Okay, so those are the disadvantages if we don't bother to think about it. However, if we do take the time to remember death, it really affects our actions in that we act meaningfully with inner discipline, and we learn to really prioritize the use of our time, and that our minds will be very clear, because the inner discipline, the ethical conduct, will be very much in the forefront of why we're doing what we're doing, the purposefulness of our life. We'll probably sleep better. We'll probably be healthier. And when we remember death, because our minds will be so clean and clear, all of our virtuous actions will be powerful and effective, because they won't be distracted by the happiness of just this life. So our motivation will become crucial when we remember death. I want to be liberated. I want to become awakened in order to benefit others. And then there is, if we remember death at the beginning of the path, it gets us on the path first of all, and that it is said that we will die with no fear. We will have our refuge intact. We would not have squandered our precious human life. If we remember death at the middle of the path, it helps us not to be complacent or distracted, and there will be no regret at the time of death. And if we remember death at the end of the path, we have kept focused on the true goals of liberation and awakening, and death will be like going on a picnic. Which is kind of an outrageous thought, but there are beings who see it that way because they have lived the Dharma and realized the Dharma in their lives. And the sixth one is we will die happily, which I don't think there's anybody who doesn't want to die happily. So kind of as the conclusion, the meditation on death helps us to be aware of it throughout the day, and familiarizing ourselves with this practice, the 9-point death meditation, makes it easier to recall it to mind as a powerful antidote to the habit of just seeking the happiness of this life, and the antidote for the complaining, small, judgmental, petty mind. That wasting mind, that mind that just sucks up all the time of a precious human life and things that have no value and in fact create the causes for future suffering. If done with regularity, the meditation on death will transform our minds. It will give us a lot of energy and enthusiasm for practice. It will help us to get clear on the time that we have and what we spend it on, and puts our lives in a much bigger perspective rather than making it a life of trivial pursuits and small-minded self-protection. So it can really be, I have found my personal experience of this meditation as I did it in 2006, 2007 during our 3-month retreat here. And it really helped me to sort of firm up my decision to become a monastic. I just did this 9-point death meditation every morning for almost 3 months. And I think it really turned my mind to being a lot lighter and brighter and more determined. And it also deepened my confidence in the Buddha's teachings. Because there isn't anything about this meditation that isn't true. That's the powerfulness about it. It's like putting in our face the experience of a sentient being in our world is that death is definite, it's uncertain, and all that goes with it is the afflictions and the karma. And Dharma is the best tool to have. I mean, this is such a realistic life truth. The Buddha isn't making up anything that isn't absolutely true here. So may we really be able to take these meditations to kind of fuel our practice and get some clarity on what we're doing with our life to really increase the purpose and the meaning of it. To kind of keep an eye on the 8 worldly concerns, our motivation for, why we go after what we go after, whether it's that stuff, whether it's those relationships, or whether it's taking care of this body of ours, is to use the 9-point death meditation as kind of a balancer, kind of keeping things in a balanced, healthy way so that we're creating virtue rather than creating non-virtue in this life. So any comments, any questions, any responses to the practice? How does your mind feel right now?
Feels calm.
Any places?
It's very sobering to do.
Sobered, yes. Sobered.
Yeah. Because sometimes going for the happiness of this life, it's got a lot of anticipatory enthusiasm around it. And there's kind of the expectations are there as well. I find that this meditation is kind of sober, brings the attachment to the happiness of this life down a few notches.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, I don't remember, there was a second disadvantage where said when life is good, we don't remember the Dharma, but when life is good, we're permanent.
It's going to last.
Yeah, when life is good, we're permanent.
Yep. We're in a permanent groove.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah, this is it.
Yep.
There's a question online that says, our lifespan cannot be at all extended by purifying karma and generating merit?
Boy, I don't know about that.
Because
the untimely-
by our karma. So we can purify.
Okay,
Sorry.
so the question is that can't our lifespan be extended by purifying karma and generating merit?
So we can maybe avoid or mitigate those things that might erupt in
Untimely
an
death.
untimely death.
So we can mitigate perhaps the causes and conditions that could bring about an untimely death.
The karmic set. We only have as much time as we have the karma to have the time for.
Yeah, we only have the karma that we have created to have the time for. It's not like we can create on top of that another kind of karma that extends that life. Now, on a practical level, by eating well, having particular kind of environments, transforming and changing our minds, I think on some level we create very cooperative conditions to sort of nourish whatever positive seeds that we have in our minds in that way as cooperative conditions. But as far as like extending a karmic determination when we were born, I don't think that can happen. But untimely deaths, we may be able to mitigate that. That's as best as we can do with that one. But we're still going to die. Okay, so extending our lifespan, whether it, if that were possible, what are we going to do with that extended lifespan? Are we going to continue to create the causes for, a lower rebirth? Or are we going to do something really, really important with our life? So it's got to kind of figure out the motivation behind wanting that in the first place.
Every time that I do this meditation, it helps me to identify things in my life that maybe where I'm just wasting time, things that I feel like, I really don't have to do that. I don't have to sleep 8.5 hours a night. I really feel just fine when I sleep 7. So maybe I can read a little more, or listen to another teaching, or help out with something around that needs to be done, or whatever. And I just find it's a little easier to do those things after doing this.
Yeah. So Clinton is saying that when he does this practice, the 9-point death meditation, he looks at some of the places in his life where he kind of squanders time, like he might sleep a little bit longer than he really needs to, kind of maybe spacing out. He'd prefer maybe less sleep, maybe do a little bit more helping around. So he looks at the places that are easy for him to be able to make a shift, but this meditation sounds like it helps him to make those shifts. And he just is really honest, seeing those little places where he piddles his precious human life away. Which is a great place to start. I mean, that adds up an extra one less hour of sleep. If you can live with 7, then you've got 1 hour to practice, to read, to think about the Dharma.
I also find that this meditation helps me. It's certainly the antidote for attachment, but one of the things it particularly shows is that the only person who dies is me. Meaning then that the only person who's really responsible for this life is me. So all the people I try to please, or all the people that I've been, all of that seems just so silly in the face of this.
So Venerable Chuni is saying that one of the things that this meditation helps her to realize that the only one that is going to die is me, and that therefore I am the only one responsible for that me that is dying, and that all the attachment to friends, and it works on her attachment to, and that friends especially for
stuff like that,
family and friends, things that are not responsible for her life. And so it really brings her own personal sense of, this is mine and I'm the one who has something to say about it, and that I'm the one who makes the decisions on how this life will go and how it will end.
And who will reap the results.
And who will reap the results that merely label die.
We've got 2 more questions online. what is the best way to keep our mind from becoming nihilistic with all the death thoughts?
So what can help to prevent the nihilistic thoughts that may arise at thinking about all this death? Well, once again, on a level, the I of this life, the person of this life ceases. But nihilism is making the assertion that everything ceases. So we have to remember that although the body and mind separate at the time of death, that continuity of mind continues on. Okay, and what that mind takes with it is going to be all of the virtuous and non-virtuous karmic seeds, energy traces into the next life. Okay, so we have to keep remembering that there is not an annihilation that happens at the time of death, that there is actually the merely labeled I, then independence on that continuity of consciousness goes on to the next life. So we don't have to get caught with this finality, which is what happens with nihilism, is this extinguishment of this self.
And balancing it.
And
making sure that you also meditate on precious human mind, that you meditate on your Buddha nature, that you meditate on that very thing that you just said about the continuity of consciousness, so it doesn't become the sole meditation, but that you balance it depending on where your mind is.
Yep. So to balance the meditation on death, on precious human life, on the Buddha nature, the potential that we have to become awakened, on which we're creating the causes for in this very life. So we're kind of balancing this more sobering death meditation with this wonderful potential and the preciousness of what we've got going for us right now. So it kind of gives the mind a lifting and at the same time a very clear ability to prioritize on what we're going to do.
So then Children recommends not doing the death meditation when you're down and discouraged.
Yes, so discouragement and being sad and depressed, don't do the death meditation. Do your precious, human life. Do meditations on love and bodhicitta and the kindness of others. It's only when the death is really helpful, when the mind's just complaining, or it's really attached, or it's going into these afflictive states of mind that are just spinning us around and getting us nowhere, but creating the causes to have suffering in the future. So it really kind of reins in these afflictive states of mind that get us going into harming ourselves this life and harming ourselves in the future lives. But don't do it when you're feeling kind of gray and cloudy and ominous.
If we need a particular form to hold in mind during the death process, which is best? Our teacher, a deity, the Buddha?
So when you're, say that again, please.
If we need a particular form.
If we need a particular form in mind
during the death process.
During the death process,
which is best?
Which is best, our teacher, a deity, or the Buddha? Well, I would have to think that may be an individual decision based on our relationships to each one of those three things. Some of the great teachers have a very specific deity practice that they do during the death process, and they have everybody around them doing it. Some people have very deep karmic connections with their teachers, and so they really bring them into mind. And then, of course, the Buddha being the fundamental teacher who's given us the tools to be able to go through death with some sort of clarity and peace. There's also, emptiness, there's bodhicitta. So I think it's kind of an individual thing on what really, and once again, we have to understand that whatever that strong image is that connects us deeply to the Dharma, we want to be so familiar to that, so at the time of death, it arises like almost spontaneously. We don't want to not think about our teacher or green tar or the Buddha, and then at the time of death want our minds to be able to hold that as we're going through the dying process. We have to be so familiar with that image in our minds so that we can have it right there, just to even think about it, and it's there. So we need to. But people will have different ideas of who that is or what that will be. But we start now getting that familiarity. Okay. So let's bring our minds back to this refuge field in the space in front of us. To have a sense of gratitude for the great compassion of the Buddha, to be able to lay this Lamrim, the teachings, and the great masters who have synthesized his words into this precise path on how to meditate on these topics. So to have this deep gratitude for the Buddha, for that great compassion for our teachers, to be able to teach us. And so imagine then the entire refuge field absorbing into the Buddha, who then comes to the crown of our heads and the heads of all sentient beings around us. And really imagine that the mother sentient beings have been with us tonight, going through the meditation on death with us, having some insights, having some understandings, being able to be touched deeply with the Dharma. So to really include them in this sense of gratitude, to be able to share this with them, to include them. And then that Buddha melts into light, down through the crown of our heads, filling our bodies and mind with this transparent light, blessing and inspiring our minds, so that we can one day actualize the teachings. And then that Buddha reappears at our heart, continuing to radiate the love of infinite compassion and wisdom out into the world.